Hey y'all, let's talk about the portfolio project. This video is for week one. In week one, you will learn about how to set up React projects, how to map data and display it in a React project. So this week in the portfolio project, you can apply those concepts and get an app that is showing some data that you made. Let's get started. Let's do this thing. If it's all scary to you, don't worry. I'm going to walk you through each piece of this, so hopefully it won't be so scary. Don't worry about having an idea yet. Let's just get things set up and then we can kind of go from there. So the goal of this video is for you to start with having absolutely nothing and get you to a point where you have some data in like an array of objects is typically what we want, and to have that data be displayed in a web page through React. Now it's not going to be pretty. I mean, you can make it pretty, but even if it's not pretty, the goal is just to get some data displaying in a web page. So to start that, we've got to make a React project. We've got to run some commands that will create a React project for us, and then open up the folder that that command creates in VS Code. The command that we need to run to start a React app is npx create React app, and then the name of your app, just a name that it's going to make the folder. Honestly, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to do portfolio project because why not? Make sure you pay attention to where on your computer this command is running. That is where it will create that folder. I'm going to have it make it on my desktop, but if you want it to make it somewhere else, you could cd into a different folder and run the command there to have it run from a different spot. I am going to run npx create React app, and I'm just going to call my folder portfolio project, and I will run that. That's going to take a minute or two to just kind of download a bunch of files, set everything up for us. And once it's done, we will open up this folder in VS Code. So let's time travel forward just a second. All right, it's finished. So now I just need that folder opened up in VS Code in some way, shape, or form. One easy way to do it is to move into the folder that it just made. So my folder is called Portfolio Project. So I'll do cd space portfolio, and I'll just have it autocomplete for me by hitting the tab key. Cd into there, and then I will run code space dot, and it should open that up for me in VS Code. All right, now we are in VS Code, opened up to our portfolio project folder. So now we can get this thing running. In order to get this running, we've got to open a terminal. So to open a terminal, we can go terminal, new terminal, come in here, and the command to run a React app is npm start. That is the only way to run a React app. We cannot use live server. We cannot go open up the HTML file in the browser. We cannot do any sort of like run debug stuff, at least not without setting up a lot of other pieces. So generally speaking, to run a React app, you need to run npm start. That is the way to run a React app. No other way is going to work correctly for you. So I go into a terminal, I make sure that terminal is pointed to the folder that I created when I did npx create React app, and then I run the command npm start. Run that command, it should kind of set everything up, bundle everything up real nicely, and then if we look at it in the browser, we can see our beautiful little app with this weird spinny picture. What else? That's sort of the preloaded content. We're going to rip that out and we're going to put in our own stuff. Now, if in your VS Code, when you run it, you get some kind of warning, here's one that I'm getting, you don't need to worry about that. Anything sort of like in yellow or that says warning is probably not your problem. If we get any sort of red errors, that's probably something that you did and you want to make sure that you fix it. But if before you've even touched anything, you're just getting some yellow errors, but you can still see it in the browser, then you don't need to worry about those errors. So we've got it running, but it's running with that sort of pre-filled boilerplate stuff. Let's put in our own stuff. we go into the source folder and we go into app.js. This is kind of the main component, and then we can build more components from there. We will just rip out everything in this div folder, get it all out of there. We don't need this div class name equals app. We don't need any of this, the CSS file that was pre-written for us. We don't care about this thing. And we don't care about this image. We can just rip all of that out and just have ourselves a sort of blank slate to start building from. All right, save that. We can put whatever we want in here. H1 my app. Save that, and now if we go look in the browser, we can see that it says my app, what we put in our little app component. That's all well and good, but that's not what we actually want in there. We want to get some data showing from our own app idea, and this is where we need to pause and come up with an app idea. But here's the thing, don't overthink it. I cannot stress this enough. Do not overthink this bit, please. The idea does not matter. Nobody cares. No employers are like, look, I don't care about their React skills, but what idea did they come up for their practice project? Nobody cares. The point is just to come up with some idea that lets you get your hands in these Reacty concepts, practice with them, and start to get a better understanding of them. So in order for it to be a good practice, it needs to be something that gets at the core of React's functionality, which is dynamic content. Something where data is created, deleted, updated in some way. So when you are thinking up an idea, just make sure you've got something like that in there and that is the focus of your idea so that you can really get your hands into React's concepts and not kind of spend your time working on things that are not the focus of this class, like what it looks like or making static pages like an about page or something like that. That's not the focus of this class. The focus of this class is building software. So you want to make sure your portfolio project is focused in on software concepts like create, update, delete, that kind of stuff. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly create and delete buttons, but something like a shopping cart that allows you to add items to the cart, that's a create, and remove items from the cart, that's a delete. Or update how many of that item are in the cart. Do you want 2 of it, 3 of it, 4 of it? That is an update. Or a fake email client. Doesn't have to really email things. The point is just to get your hands in there. So maybe you can send an email and that's create, and you can star emails and that's update, and you could archive an email and that's delete or something like that. Something that lets us get our hands in those concepts. Nice if you pick an idea that's somewhat interesting to you because you're going to spend a lot of time working on this portfolio project. So if it's something kind of interesting to you, that helps a little bit. I'm really into board games, so I'm going to make an app where you can track different board games and maybe rate them and search for board games of a particular type. Something like that. So maybe you can add board games in, you can rate the board games, that's like an update, and you can remove board games that you got rid of, and that would be the delete. So we're gonna go back to our VS Code now and get this implemented. We are gonna start by just making some fake test data. I'm just gonna make it literally up at the top of my app.js file. You could put this in a separate file, or you can just stick it straight in here. Whatever you want, doesn't really matter. I'm gonna do const games list equals, and I'm gonna put in a little fake array of objects. So they'll have IDs. You pretty much always want IDs. They will have a name. One board game that I love is Scythe. And then maybe I'll have a rating that maybe starts out as nothing, and later you could fill in the rating. And maybe it has like a category of, category is, I have no idea. What are the categories of board games? Fun. This is in the fun category. That is the category of board games that Scythe is in. So then I will put in 2 more of those real quick for us. All right, I've got my little list of some test games I just threw in there. You want to just get some test data in there so that you can make sure it's displaying the data correctly. And then as we move forward, we can allow you to add data or get it from an API or something like that. But to start out, we want to just put in an array of objects that we can start working with. And I just put it straight in here. Okay, we've got an array of objects. Now we need to map that array of objects so that we can display it in our page. This is one of the trickiest bits of this week, but super important and a really, really good thing to practice. So let's talk a little bit about how we can map this data to display it in the page. When you are mapping an array of data, we use the map method and we will give it a callback function that takes in a parameter that will have one item at a time. So in my case, it would have one board game at a time. And then it will map that to some kind of an HTML or JSX that will display each of those items. This code right here is showing us mapping an array of messages that maybe have a text property on them. So we're mapping each one to a div that inside of that div is showing the text of the message. There's curly brackets around the whole thing because we take this line and we stick it straight into our JSX. Let's apply this concept over to our list of board games. So right here, we'll change this to say my board games. All right, and then we want to map this list of board games right here displayed in our app. So we need the curly brackets. We do the array, which is called games list. So let's put games list right here. Dot map, and then we're going to give it a callback function. This callback function will be called with each object in this array. First with this one, then with this one, then with this one. So I will call the parameter to that callback function game. And then I'll map this to, I don't know, maybe a little paragraph. And inside of that paragraph, it will say game.name, which should be whatever is in the name property. And maybe break this out a little bit. I'm going to put this in parentheses around this paragraph just to make it easy to kind of break this out down here. Make it clear kind of what we're doing here. And then inside this paragraph, well, maybe actually, let's put this in a div. And we'll have a H4 for the game name and a little paragraph that will have the game category. And maybe another paragraph for the game rating. Game.rating. Well, why not? What else? All right, so this should say the game's name, the rating, and the category, and it should show this. It should make a div like this for each game with that game's information inside of it. Let's see if it works. All right, taking a look at this in the browser. This is looking good. We see Silas fun, Mashikoro, you build a deck, and Galaxy Trucker is fun. So we can see other things. None of them have a rating, so that's not showing up yet. The mapping is working. It is ugly, but also it's kind of beautiful. If you think about it, it's kind of beautiful too. So we did it. That was our original goal, to have an array of objects and display them with React. We did it. Mission accomplished. If you get there, beautiful, gorgeous. If you'd like to take it like a few steps further, practice a few more concepts, push yourself a little bit more, we will look at making a separate component for displaying a board game and using that component in the app component. And we will look at putting this code up on Git in a Git repository and pulling in Bootstrap and styling it a little bit with Bootstrap. If you'd like to see how to do that, keep watching. First extra bit we're going to add is making a component for displaying a board game that's sort of separated out. We could write everything in our app component, but it would get really out of hand, and we couldn't reuse bits as well. So we're going to separate that out into its own component. All we have to do to make a new component is make a new file the file should be named with an uppercase letter because components are named with an uppercase letter, and the name of the file should match the name of the component. I will call this game card.js. Simple name. Then we need to make a function game card named the same as the file name. And we need to make sure that we export default game card down here at the bottom so that we can use it over in the app component. For now, we'll just have this return a little div in here, but let's go get the actual content that we want from the app component. Over in the app component, this is what we want to be in our game card component. So if I cut this and bring it over here and drop it in here, then back over here, I can replace this with game card. Now we're gonna have ourselves a problem. Let's simplify this a little bit. We'll bring it all up onto one line. The problem is if we go over here to game card, where is game coming from? It doesn't know what game is because game is a variable in an entirely separate function. This little baby callback function is what knows about the game variable. Game card is an entirely separate function that has no idea. How do you get information from one function to another? You pass it as a parameter. But when we're talking a React component, it's a little bit more complex. Instead, we have to pass it as a prop. We have to kind of pretend like we're setting an HTML attribute, and then that information will be accessible to us in the component through the parameter list, but we'll look at that. So I'm going to make a prop called game, why not? And I'm gonna set it equal to this parameter right here. Now this part can get really confusing because we have gameslist.map game to game card where game is set to game. It's a lot of the word game happening in there. Just for funsies, let's change this variable to be called G to make it a little bit clearer. So this parameter right here is getting put into this prop called game on the game card component. Then over in the game card component, we can make sure it is accepting a props parameter. And in order to access the game, we can't just do game right here. That's not how React components work. Instead, we have to do props here. Technically, you could name this parameter whatever you want, but don't. Always call it props. And then we will do props.game.name, props.game.rating, and props.game.category. Now, this game parameter right here that's going to be each game one by one will be given to each game card that it creates one by one in a game prop, and then it can be accessed here, and it should now, if we go look it in the browser, look the exact same as it did before. So we did all this work for it to look the same, but now we have a better structure and we got to practice making a component and making props. Let's go look at it in the browser. Looking at it in the browser, we have got an error, game card is not defined. Do you have any idea why would it be giving us that error? Why is it saying game card is not defined? Let's go look at our app.js because that's where the error is, app.js line 27. Looking in our app.js on line 27, that's where we're using game card right here, but app.js has no idea what game card is. In order for one file to know about something from another file, it has to be exported and imported. Now we already exported game card, but we have not imported game card. So up here we write import. We exported it default, so we put no curly brackets. We just type game card, and then we tell it where to get it from. And now here in quotation marks, we have to put the path to that game card.js file. We do a dot to say, look right where you're at, look in the folder you're already in, and then find something called game card. We do not put .js on the end, we just do game card. Save that, go look at it in the browser again, and now we can see it's working just the same as it was before. Woohoo! It's exactly the same. Yay! But awesome! We made a component, we used props. Next thing we're gonna do, let's pull in Bootstrap. To pull in Bootstrap, we need to go to our index.js and add this line of code. Import bootstrap/dist/css/bootstrap.min.css. And we need to make sure we have installed those files into this exact folder. So you need to, in a terminal, maybe the one at the bottom of the VS Code, you need to run npm install bootstrap. That will download the files into that folder bootstrap/dist.css/bootstrap.min.css. So there's an actual file there for us to import. Let's do both of those steps. All right, let's open up our terminal again, and let's run npm install bootstrap. This will install the latest version of Bootstrap. If you want to know which version you have installed, you can go look in your package.json. We have just installed version 5.3. You might be installing a different version if Bootstrap has updated since this video was made. We've pulled in Bootstrap, and now for that CSS file, with all the Bootstrap styles to be available everywhere, we need to pull it into our index.js. We'll pull it in before our CSS file. This doesn't have anything we put in there, but whatevs, we'll leave that there. And in our index.js, right before this, we will import bootstrap/dist/css/bootstrap.min.css. That should do it for us. And now we should be able to use Bootstrap styles. So let's come over here to this game card and let's add some classes onto it. You have to do class name in React components. So we'll do class name equals, and we'll do bg-light, border, padding 4, margin 2. Let's try that and let's see what we get. Looking at it over in the browser, we can see it's looking good. Our Bootstrap is applied. We've got a slight styling now. Look, I'm not a designer, okay? But Bootstrap is working. We've applied a little bit of styles. Now, I highly recommend don't spend too much time messing around with Bootstrap. That's not the point of this class, right? You already had a Bootstrap class. The point of this class is to practice React. It can be really easy to want to procrastinate doing the hard Reacty stuff by doing the easier Bootstrap stuff, but don't do it. Don't do it. Focus on React. That's where your time is going to pay off for you in better understanding of React. All right, we've got Bootstrap in here. We've got a component in here. Last little extra bit I want to talk about is hooking this up to a GitHub repository. In order to do that, we need to get ourselves a GitHub repository. So let's go over to the browser and open up GitHub. Let's do github.com and let's make ourselves a new repository. We will call this board game portfolio. We'll call it games portfolio demo. Great, I'll just make that public. And I'll do create repository. And now I'm just going to need this bit right here. This will allow me to hook up this online repository to my local repository on my computer and make it so that I can push changes I've made on my computer up to the repository. So let's go back to our VS Code. And in our VS Code, we need to run some commands. These are the commands that we need to run. We need to connect our repository, our online repository, to our local repository, make sure that the name of our branch matches industry standards by changing it to the name main, and then we run add, commit, and push to make a little snapshot of our files in their current state and push that up to the online repository. So let's run those commands. Git remote add origin, and we will paste in that bit that I copied, right-clicking, and at least git bash. We'll paste it. You might have to do like a right-click paste sort of a situation. Don't do that. Get away. Stop that. What the heck? Depending on what terminal you are working in, pasting might work a little bit different. But I'm going to run that. That should connect the two together. Then I'm going to do git branch -m main to make sure the name of my branch is main. It is awesome. Okay, now I do git add dot, git commit -m. By the way, we don't care about those, doesn't really matter. We'll do git commit -m, and then I just write a little message to say why I'm committing. I'll say added test games data and game card. And I'll do git push. And now that, oh, whoopsie daisy, we got to do git push origin main. And if we do git push -u, then in later times we'll just be able to do git push, but first time you got to do git push origin main. All right, push that up, and now if we refresh it, we should be able to see our code all up there on a GitHub repository. You can take this link and share that code with anyone, show it off to potential employers, all that good stuff. And we can see any of the code that we wrote, like our beautiful game card component. So beautiful. So hopefully this was helpful. And now it's time to go forth and make a big old mess. Fun.